My name is Gilonne, and I'm the CEO of BeSound, which produces sensory motor feedback loop digital tools that are based on neuroscience and clinical evidence for the treatment of trauma. And these tools allow users to be more embodied and get a restored sense of agency. And as a result, they can instantly alleviate some symptoms, accelerate therapy, and deepen recovery. And currently we are beta testing with some clinicians and with some various research units. We expect that our first products will be on the market by Q3 of 2022. As for my background, I grew up in France and went to college in the United States. My mother is American and my father is French. And I went to Brown University for my undergrad. Then I went to England for my graduate degrees. I was particularly interested in the intersection of war crimes, mental health, and climate change. So I studied public international law with a focus on issues of sovereignty. So how do we manage our global commons, and how do we prosecute global crimes? What will happen to the biggest polluters when countries like the Maldives won't have land anymore? Will there be some major prosecutions or at least lawsuits to get reimbursement for or damages for past pollution? And that led me to a career where I worked in a lot of times in large companies, innovating on what now would be called social and environmental or sustainability projects. So on climate finance and new technologies in climate change. And that led me to work on cellular agriculture, which is the production of animal products without animals. And the idea there is that in the industrialization of animals to produce meat for the mass market, it's actually theoretically inefficient to grow a whole animal just to harvest a few parts. And so we launched some research to see if it would be possible to harvest animal proteins and other now animal-derived products from cells, essentially. That organization is called New Harvest, and at the time there was just my colleague and me, and now there's a big industry. I think that there's about $1 billion that has been invested in that industry, if not more. And then I had a personal health challenge a few years ago, and that put me on pause. And when I returned to the workforce, I decided that I was going to focus on mental health. And so that is how I ended up working at BeSound. I found my co-founder, Félix Schroeder, who is a brilliant French neuroscientist, because I was looking for what were the new technologies out there to treat trauma, because actually therapists and people who are suffering from trauma, whether it's developmental trauma or circumstantial trauma, like war veterans, actually have quite few resources, and talk therapy and pharma, which are the main go-tos, are quite limited, and virtual reality, which is used now in some settings for trauma treatment, are disconnecting from one's environment. And from a neuroscientific perspective, ideally, healing happens in connection. And so our product at BeSound has no screen, and it allows an interaction between the client or patient and the therapist. I think that as a woman in the balance, I've actually faced no discrimination, because as a woman, I've had advantages that a man in my position would not have had, especially as a young journalist when I was covering Western Sahara. But there is the embedded misogyny in just everyday language. For example, it's an insult to say it's a girly drink. But by and large, I don't think that I faced what my mother's generation has faced. And I think that girls today actually are probably in the reverse situation, where boys are being put down. So it's a question that I have a little trouble answering, because I think that girls, let's be clear, in the Western world, in the United States and Europe, are very much supported. That is certainly not true in many other parts of the world. And I don't think that my experience is particularly helpful, probably, for young women who come from countries where there's a vast amount of discrimination. Maybe there will be, but I have to recognize that I've had considerable advantages given my nationality, skin color, and the privileges that come with all of that. I would encourage young women now to embrace difference and embrace diversity, and that means gender diversity, and really learn to work with boys and men and other girls and other women, and that the segregation that we can sometimes see as a backlash of movements to right the past wrongs might have some deleterious effects. And so I would really encourage girls to invite collaboration with their male peers. That is certainly an area where still today there is a big imbalance between boys and girls, young men and women. I don't really know why. I'm not a tech person per se, or at least I'm not a computer tech person. I think that coding and computer literacy is absolutely imperative, and that I would recommend anybody from the younger generation who are at school today to learn how to code a computer. That is our mode of communication today. And it's a little bit like graduating from high school 100 years ago and not knowing how to write. I think it's really, really important. It's a little bit of an exaggeration, but it puts you at a great advantage. And here in Silicon Valley, where I live, if you're a computer programmer, there's a huge demand for computer programmers, and you really do have the ability to influence what the world in the future is going to look like. And if your interest is to have some kind of social or environmental impact, then you can really make a difference for the good of the world. I'm not sure if I would recommend anybody to follow my example. I would say be kind, make lots of friends, befriend other people, and cultivate inner strength. Life is hard for everybody, and we are more resilient when we're together and when we have a rich and varied garden. And Thich Nhat Hanh, who has been my spiritual teacher for most of my life, and who died recently, it said what Voltaire said in Candide, which is, you have to cultivate your garden, and you have all sorts of seeds in yourself. and the seeds that you water are the seeds that will grow. So water the seeds of peace and water the seeds of kindness and discipline and equanimity and those kinds of things, and stay awake. Life is actually quite long. There's a great opportunity to make a lot of things in this life. And I've been extremely privileged that I have done several different things in my life. I've worked in banking, and I've made a film, and I was a lawyer for a hot minute. And now I'm starting a company, and I attribute that to luck.